Hello, everyone. I'm Fran Ashcroft, and I lead the international communications effort for Intel Corporation. I'm based in the UK, currently still working from home, which is about an hour west of London. And I report into our Chief Communications Officer, Tara Smith, at our HQ in the US. I have a fantastic team dotted around the world, from Munich to Mexico City, Beijing to Paris, Tokyo to Milan, Singapore to Warsaw. And I'm delighted to have been invited to come and talk to you today about building a global communications center of excellence. This is our story of a vision that I had for Intel outside of the US, where although we operate globally, our story was often inconsistent, creating challenges both internally and externally with our key audiences. So let's begin. And honestly, I believe that everyone sets out to build a world-class communications program. This is our mission. And at Intel, we exist to protect and promote Intel's reputation. However, there are, of course, multiple factors that influence any company's ability to design and build PR and communications efforts that integrate and scale globally. So I want to share with you initially three key takeaways that I have had so far on this journey, because things change constantly, we evolve constantly, and quite frankly, we are constantly learning. So I just want to share with you three things which I thought you might find fascinating. The first one is ensuring that brand and the business are equal partners. It is one of the hardest but most essential elements of global comms. It's so easy for that pendulum to swing one way or the other, driven by budget realities and the importance, of course, of driving sales success for the field. At Intel, we were pivoted much more aggressively towards the business, both from the sales side and also specific business units. And we have many, many business units at Intel. Over the past couple of years, we really recognized the significance of telling a complete story for the business, not only for the success, but also to better connect with our customers, with our partners, and also, of course, our own people. So our bid to become more customer obsessed began to work. COVID actually gave us a good opportunity for our global impact and social responsibility efforts with the creation of Intel's Pandemic Response Technology Initiative, which was set up very quickly in March and April of 2020. This is where Intel committed to invest $50 million around the world to combat COVID-19 using technology to study and help with the diagnosis of the coronavirus, helping disrupted educators and students, and supporting innovative new ideas and projects together with our partners and customers. It's rare that a pandemic actually gave us good opportunity, but it was our way of showing the importance of Intel and Intel's technology to the world. The second takeaway is important, is the freedom to test and learn. Any refresh or rethinking of your communications initiatives needs to be done with the intention of trying and failing several times before you get it right. We've always prided ourselves at Intel for emphasizing sharing and collaborative learning, but also as well as celebrating failure in order to learn. It's also essential that it isn't just tops down. It's not HQ telling us what to do, or even bottoms up, and the field coming back up the system to say this isn't working. It's all about that healthy exchange from your peers to region to country and all of those important stakeholders in between. Otherwise, you're not going to get the most out of your communications investment. As the significant events of the past couple of years have reminded us, and I've already touched on the pandemic, there are factors beyond our control that can take over and change our best laid plans. So it's also taught us that our ability to stay nimble and flex is also key. You also have to be willing to take risks and be bold in trying new things for two key reasons. Firstly, it might actually pay off. And how fantastic would that be? But more importantly, I think it trains you and the teams to think beyond normal. And it also trains you as a leader to not get comfortable with just doing the status quo. So I wanted to share with you an example of something which we have worked on this year across the international communications team. It has become affectionately known as supercharging communications at the edge. And it's a pilot in the spirit of test and learn that we launched in early 21 in order to extend our signature storytelling outside of the US for bigger impact. So think corporate stories, but with market relevant proof points and local voices that talk about innovation, about vision and transformation. Technical reviews, but storylines that perhaps shift perceptions, but also surrounding these international markets with key measurable communications outcomes on top of the wider efforts, right? So this wasn't just something that we kind of drop everything and let's try this. This was in addition to our day jobs. And it was a way, whilst it didn't necessarily add additional work, it was a different way of thinking. It was a different approach and it required different behaviors. So the first thing we did is that we wanted to do was scale and our key storylines and moments. So to do this, we co-create locally relevant angles around a major moment and also assets tied to those key company storylines, moments, and some customer partner initiatives. And we've had many of those across this year with our new CEO, Pat Gelsinger, joining us, with our launch of Intel Unleashed around our IDM 2.0 progress, our Architecture Day. There have been some significant major moments, and also our commitment to invest in manufacturing, both in the US, in Europe, and in Asia. So we've had some key moments and we've been able to make them more local, but keeping that corporate message, that umbrella message consistent across the world. And on that, those storytellers, we also had to scale our key company voices. So locally, of course, we had to train the trainers on the company storylines firstly, but also to prep the spokespeople in priority markets in order to deliver impactful stories. And we didn't just want them, talking from the script. We wanted them to have their own point of view. We needed them to have their own market knowledge, so that the stories that they were telling were authentic. And of course, at the HQ level, we have to advocate for and secure HQ execs and voices to anchor in certain select markets for specific stories and engagements. And I think the most significant challenge that we had was our ability to scale those strategic activations. So we developed assets for a variety of engagements with local priority influencers to bring those stories to life, to map out and support, like a drumbeat of activations across the year, aligned to that overall narrative arc that provides consistency in the messaging. And then, of course, we have to translate those storylines as well into social and digital assets that can also be localized. And it was a fantastic effort, and it really felt that the entire team around the world were coming together to make this successful. So the final takeaway is to make sure that you are making data-backed decisions. And this is critical and a massive learning when operating as a global COE. If you're going to try new things and push for the possible versus just the probable, you have to know what that all means from a business and a results perspective. And to do that, you need to make sure you're grounded in data. Now, that doesn't mean you try to quantify everything. I still genuinely believe that communications is both art and science. But even so, we operate in a business environment that has been and continues to be increasingly quantitative. And it is right and important to show how we're evaluating and evolving our craft and, of course, proving our results. One of the biggest challenges, I think, plaguing communications is the lack of consistent data. So Japan may be using one platform and Germany may be using another, which means, of course, we're never comparing apples with apples. Now, this might make one sales manager happy in Japan and the Germany country manager feel great, but at the global level, it exposes the whole communications practice and damages our credibility. So to answer this, one of the biggest benefits that I've seen was from a push that we championed 2 years ago to standardize our global reporting. It wasn't an easy task. It took a whole load of effort and investment, quite frankly. Plus, we still have areas to improve, but having a single source of truth has been a game changer. Plus, it gives us the ability to see what's working where and really know that what we're seeing is objective and helpful. So it provides insights for us to change. So I talked back before about being nimble and being able to flex. So having these insights means that we are able to look back and say, well, this isn't working here, but this is working here. And it has been an absolute game changer. I want to show you an example of that with our Supercharge program, which I talked about a little earlier, just to show you the opportunity. And this talks about the results that we had in the first half of this year, of 2021. Bearing in mind, we only set the program up really in the very late February. So this is February to the end of June. Because the initial data previously had showed us that this was a huge opportunity. Coverage at scale was often reactive and only driven at those key moments. Product coverage dominated nearly 70% versus 30% of thought leadership. And we really wanted to scale up the corporate and tech leadership narratives to have that steady drumbeat. So as a result, we began the Supercharge pilot, and here on this slide, there's an example of the results that we had. We got 168 feature stories, 87% of coverage featured an Intel executive, 49% of this featured the local executives. So we're kind of up-leveling the local exec team as well. There was a 13% increase in corporate narrative pull-through. And in fact, we're already seeing just across July and August in our most recent results, we're seeing that grow even further. But 100% feature at least one corporate message with 55% multiple message. And these stories had the highest engagement. The ones that had the highest engagement featured an a local Intel exec, which was also critical. So, in summary, we remain on a journey. We are testing and learning, adjusting our craft, but we are grounded in a global strategy with clear objectives that are measured moment by moment. Our data-driven approach has also increased the understanding of communications as a discipline, and we are now seen as a strategic and competitive advantage to the business versus just doing a bit of PR. Thanks for your time. I think we're going to have some questions.
Thanks, Fran. That was indeed very insightful and a very, very bold move in terms of building a center of excellence at Intel. What about the key reasons for you to really think through and build this center of excellence?
So, Intel is in the middle of a comeback journey. We have a new chief executive that is on a mission. We've set out our 5-year product roadmap to regain technology leadership. We're making huge manufacturing investments in the US and the rest of the world to help deliver that future. And above all else, we're focusing on ways to create world-changing technology that enriches the lives of every person on Earth. So comms is the external voice and main storytelling engine for Intel. So we needed it to be represented globally and part of the journey. So the Centre of Excellence is the way that we achieve this in order to build that world-class, inclusive, but also fearless global comms group. We like to be bold. So coming together as an entire team versus HQ and the rest of the world has enabled us to try new things, to share more, to scale more, and to learn more. Plus, the data showed us that telling a more cohesive One Intel story would have a more positive effect on our brand and our reputation. So the COE kind of enables this by removing all of those silos and letting us truly be more inclusive.
So my follow-up question is about the challenges you faced when you were building this COE. I mean, I'm sure there were several challenges that you saw. You obviously thought through that. So what were the challenges that some of us can really learn from building a center of excellence?
I think the biggest part was getting everybody on board with the idea. Removing silos and combating, as I touched on, that HQ versus rest of the world mindset, right? In many of big corporations, they think of HQ and the rest of the world, HQ and the geos. So this truly was a kind of mindset change behavior. So I spent a lot of time lobbying all of our key stakeholders across all the different business units, across the silos, to ask them to trust us, empower us, and let us test this to show that it would work. So the first one was the challenge of getting everyone on board. And I think the second one really is that as a global team, we're very culturally different around the world. We have different ways of doing things. We had boutique agencies as well as a network global agency. And of course, we wanted to keep those differences as they can be powerful, but we also needed to look at ways to act as one Intel versus I'm part of the client business unit, or I'm part of the sales business unit, or I'm part of the data center business, all of those things. But we needed to act as one Intel in order to drive more cohesive stories, really.
That brings me to the next question. Actually, we are talking about people over here, and each one of them is culturally different. Your comms team is spread over 4 regions. What were your key learnings to get your comms team aligned to the vision of the COE?
So I think it was all about inclusivity, right? It was all about inclusivity and collaboration every single step of the way. So not HQ versus the rest of the world. And I think also we kind of started bottoms up. So we started on the ground on a blank sheet of paper, if you like, and we pushed the ideas up, and then we got the tops down ideas as well, and then we kind of blended those. And we had to ensure that every market, every region had the opportunity to have a say in the output. And we continue to do that as we look at those key moments every week, quite frankly. There's a process that we call co-creation. So we adopt as I've touched on before, we dare to fail. So we adopted a test and learn approach, which included pilot programs. It included employee initiatives, workshops, regular swarm brainstorms with both our team and our agency partners as well. Plus, of course, narrative development and then sometimes redevelopment. We all like to wordsmith, and constantly letting the data guide us on what was working and what wasn't.
You spoke about making brand and business an equal partner. Now, it's easier said than done, right? Because there are those challenges that comes from the business, and then in the integration of comms into driving commerce for business is the critical aspect. What were the roadblocks, if any, that you or your team faced while you were trying to get the brand and the business come together?
So this piece is all about the data. So the first up, we show them our data. We had 2 years of data, so we were able to do year-on-year comparison. So we showed them where we were in 2020 and where we wanted to be in 21, demonstrating, if you like, the benefits of a more cohesive approach on our wider brand and reputation. And then we look to connect with our counterparts in the other business areas, looking for new ways to break down silos and work together. So, working with sales, working with marketing, working with other parts of the business in our efforts to mine for these cohesive stories as well. So one way we did this was through our regional executive team and the Supercharge program, right? We wanted to help give regional leaders a louder voice within our external comms and the ability to take a global story and add that local nuance. So we briefed and trained them on key moments. We gave them storytelling tools. We provided materials and advice along the way. And you know what? It paid off, because that recent data that I touched on earlier for July and August showed us that the regional executive commentary received 200% times more engagements on average than those that didn't. So it's about getting people on board and understanding that we're not doing just a bit of PR. What we're doing is a strategic advantage to the business, and that the discipline is well understood. So lots of lobbying, lots of talking, lots of networking, all done virtually, and lots of initial meetings and earning your seat at those tables.
That's very interesting. Data is driving and gaining a lot of importance in the communication field. How did you really build capabilities for your team to take that data for the local local CEOs, local spokespeople to drive business results?
I think the data, well, it's not so much the data, it's the insights from the data have been really critical in A, helping us define how we should approach the COE, and B, proving its success, and C, allowing us to learn along the way. As I mentioned earlier, we've been on this 2-year journey to transform measurement, and getting the entire global team on board has been a journey. Everyone has an opinion about their data and if certain things are missing, and we had to kind of change the mindset that we weren't looking for perfection. We were just trying to get consistency in that data. So we're really starting to make waves now. Our teams are using data widely in the quarterly business reviews. Sorry, my phone's ringing. In the quarterly business reviews, in our weekly newsletters, we do regular targeted comms to our key stakeholders. We do campaign and event reports and much more, but very targeted, very specific at those markets. I'm actually really excited to see how much further we can go using this data as it builds year on year. And we can, we're measuring what we can do with the data, but also the team's ability to use it as it matures.
It's great to hear you talk about being fearless and equipping your team through the Center of Excellence. I think there's a lot of learning that's coming out of this conversation for all of us who are now actually getting into data insights, etc. Last question, and this is slightly on the personal note. You spent more than a decade at Intel. What are some of the evolution you witnessed in the function?
Oh gosh, good question. Yes, I'm nearly 13 years now. So much evolution, right? It has been pretty incredible in that time. I'm just trying to think back to what it was like 10 years ago. At that time, comms was very fragmented across audiences with HR-owned employee comms, HQ were driving corporate, and PR, quite frankly, was reporting into marketing and sales around the world. But 5 years ago, maybe 6, we went through a modernization of communications and began to centralize the function for business integrity as much as anything else. So we had the regional team that came together and was called the international team. So we have our 4 regions. We have the Americas, we have China, we have Asia Pacific, Japan, and we have EMEA. And that we all form part of that international team. I sit now on the Global Communications Group leadership team as well, reporting into Tara Smith, our CCO. We operate as one global team across all of our audiences. That's corporate, technology, and employees. We have the same objectives. We are aligned strategically under one vision of protecting and promoting Intel's reputation across the entire business. And now, more so, comms is seen as a strategic and competitive advantage to the business. And I personally have never been prouder to be part of the Intel family. You know, it's been an amazing journey, and I'm so excited about what's to come.
Thank you, Fran, for sharing your insights and
Thank you.
really encouraging a lot of the viewers and listeners to think through this Center of Excellence piece. Uh, Happy to have you. Over to you, Anubhati.
Thank you.